Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Tagay. Well, the premiers had their news conference following this 3-day Muskoka summit. We're going to go over that and of course, do some filler. Like normal. Put some reality into, well, what's going on. And from there, we're just going to kind of dabble on a few other things that are going on across Canada here. Of course, the sentencing hearings have started for Tamara and Chris. Social media is ablaze with all of the, pro-Hamas protests, like the shootings, poking and drugs and chaos, just absolute chaos that's going on in the streets, and how these people keep getting let out. There's a lot of people talking revolt. Like if Chris and Tamara do a single day, I really get the feeling we're gonna see a freedom convoy larger than anything we saw before. It's amazing how many people online, and a lot of people online who were just over the last course of the last couple of years actually removed themselves from propaganda and started to see what actually happened and how evil our government was, are joining forces. So hey, I'm all up for a trip to Ottawa. Anyways, we're going to dabble on a few other things as well. Just some stuff going on with the Pokey Poke program, like our version of the VARS program for vaccine injuries. Global actually did a couple breaking stories on it. And of course, a lot of the other mainstream, they're not touching it. We're going to dabble on that today and a few other things if we have time. Let's just get started with this whole premier's grand finale. And like I said, we'll fill in the blank spots with sorry, so sorry, just the truth, just the facts.
Well, thank you so much. I just want to start by thanking my fellow premiers. I always say I have a team of champions for such a positive and productive meeting over the last few days. I'm proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with my fellow premiers as Team Canada, and it's never been more important and never been more united since I've been premier for the last over seven and a bit years. Over the last 3 days, Canada's premiers have worked hard to move forward on our shared priorities. We've met with the Indigenous leaders and frontline healthcare workers. We sat down with Prime Minister Carney, and that's the first time that's happened, to discuss ongoing negotiations with the U.S. and how we're working together to build a stronger, more competitive economy. We met as premiers and talked about the issues that matter most to the people we serve. We talked about standing up for workers in the face of President Trump's tariffs. We talked about cutting red tape, opening internal markets, and building a stronger, more self-reliant economy. We talked about the need for real bail reform that keeps criminals behind bars and keeps our communities safe. Prime Minister Carney has made it very clear in the comments to premiers, and will be holding him accountable on bail reform. Premiers are also calling for a stronger provincial role in immigration. For one simple reason, we know our labor markets best. At our first ministers' meetings, Prime Minister Carney agreed. Yesterday, at a meeting of federal and provincial immigration ministers, the federal immigration minister wasn't on the same page as her prime minister.
As Canadians, I don't know a single person who doesn't think immigration is out of control. I haven't met a single person through all the social media, when I get a lot of lefties who comment on a lot of the things that that I put out there, like on the TikTok, Facebook, and all these other platforms, nobody ever says anything. Oh, we got to increase numbers, or oh, immigration's fine. Ever. Never. It's always out of control. Out of control. Now, I just want to show you something. This is insane. My bad. This one. Ottawa's hotel bill for asylum seekers is $1.1 billion. But that's not all. And this article doesn't take into account all of the provinces and other monies through other organizations that are being funneled through the federal government and provinces to help try to house these people, feed these people. The federal government says it has spent $1.1 billion to house asylum seekers in hotels since 2017. On top of the $1.5 billion it has given provinces and cities to help pay the refugee claimants' upkeep, which is lacking funds. The provinces are paying out of their own pockets. This is chump change. So the government and their propaganda can say, oh, no, we're giving them money. We're helping. Ottawa began housing asylum seekers in hotels in 2017 as temporary stopgaps as shelters were overwhelmed by increasing numbers. So there's another stat. So what about all of the money going into the shelters? That's not in this report. It started block booking rooms to help relieve the burden on provinces and towns to accommodate the rising number of claimants. Asylum claims have increased dramatically from 50,000 plus in 2017 to 173,000 in 2024. Most arrive in Ontario and Quebec, particularly in Montreal and Toronto. This is insane. The average cost for each claimant is $132 a day, down from $199 a day in January, what it used to be in 2004. Yeah. Again, that's because of the way they're rolling out, and this doesn't take it to account. They've created other agencies that aren't being brought into the books. It's a way for them to hide the excessive amount of money. We're talking tens upon tens of billions of dollars. An internal briefing on asylum housing drawn up in March for then Immigration Minister Rachel Benduin, who was replaced in the role by Lena Diab in May, said the department is currently maintaining about 3,500 beds for contingency purposes. While the provision of housing and supports for asylum claimants falls under provincial, territorial, get it, and municipal responsibility, as an emergency response, the federal government began to backstop overwhelmed shelters by directly running hotels in 2017. The IRCC's transition binder for the previous minister to brief her on issues including asylum and housing said that $66.6 million has been secured to continue hotel operations until September 2025. As usual, I post all of my links in the description below so you can read over this entire article. I more than likely will be doing an episode on this here in the near future, because what we spend on this century initiative, this WEF global cabal push to literally remove Canadians, overwhelm us, and just completely take away our right to vote, which we already seen in the last election. Our votes won't matter. It's not gonna matter. Let's go back to Dougie.
We need the Prime Minister to be very, very clear with his minister. She needs to work with the provinces and territories to fix Canada's immigration system and make it more responsive to economic and market needs. In the meantime, Canada's premiers agreed to work together to use our authorities under Section 95 of the Constitution, including to issue our own work permits. I'll speak for Ontario. We will be issuing our own work permits. We aren't going to sit around and wait for the federal government. On healthcare, we're making it easier for nurses and doctors to move and work anywhere in Canada.
Now, a little birdie told me, actually, I've heard this read and seen a lot of other people talking about it, but I actually had a little birdie who's from Ontario reach out to me and say, watch Ford flip from kissing Carney's butt today. I guess the polls are showing this was not looked upon well. He's getting hammered on pretty good for, well, sticking his head, elbows up, Carney's tush. So that's why you're seeing a little bit of a different Ford today. Like I keep saying, he's a politician. That's all he cares about is himself. Now, he's got some good ideas, but he just copies. He's definitely not his brother.
We also talked about new ways to get life-saving medications into the hands of patients faster. But most importantly, we agreed on the need to remain united. And I've always said, united we stand, divided we fall. I know we're in great hands under the leadership of PEI Premier Rob Lance, who will soon take over as chair of the council.
Right, so he ends up going off on the swapping hands to the next. Let's just move on.
Hi there, Mackenzie Gray with Global News. Premier Smith, you and a number of premiers have said that you were going to speak with Premier Eby about the idea of getting an oil pipeline through BC. I'm wondering how those conversations went. And Mr. Eby, I'd hope you could respond to how you feel those went. And I want to follow up on something you said yesterday, too. You said you'd be supportive of a potential oil pipeline through Alberta if Ms. Smith was able to find a proponent for that. I just want to clarify, you'd be open to having a pipeline going through BC if there was a company that was willing to do that?
I'll start because I know that maybe the media isn't aware of how many areas of common ground that Premier Eby and I have. We have talked about ammonia export from the Port of Prince Rupert. I'm very supportive of the LNG expansions that are underway, as well as additional new LNG proposals. We have talked about an intertie so that we can have our electricity systems with greater integration, and of course expanding the capacity of the Trans Mountain pipeline by putting in additional measures, compression, and a few other things. They can actually expand the capacity as well as dredging the second narrows, and we've been supportive of that as well. So I would say that what we're looking forward to is a potential to restart what I think would have been a transformational project with Northern Gateway. It may not be the same route. It certainly needs to have a lot more consultation. The first time that it went through, it had 35 Indigenous partners who were equity owners in that, and that has to be the starting point for any new project. There has to be meaningful engagement and meaningful economic involvement of nations. So we're advancing that along with the Pathways project, because we think that having lower and lower emissions is also a way to demonstrate we've listened to some of the concerns about that have been raised by British Columbia, but I would say that our priority is to work on those first 4 projects that I mentioned, and then if we can get to a point where we have a proponent and are able to start on that, then we will.
Thanks very much for the question. Let me just begin. We're facing a bit of a situation in British Columbia right now. At our Red Chris mine in northwest British Columbia, there was an accident overnight. There are 3 miners that are currently trapped underground. They are, to the best of our knowledge, uninjured and in a refuge area. There was early communication with the company. The company is working with our world-leading mining rescue teams. BC miners are the best in the world. Our rescue teams are exceptional, and they will be working overtime to bring these workers home safely to their families. Two of the workers are from British Columbia, one is from Ontario. I've spoken with Premier Ford, and we're keeping his government up to date as well. Obviously, it's very concerning for the families, for the workers in the sector, and all British Columbians and Canadians, and our thoughts are with the families and appreciation with the incredibly brave rescue teams that are working right now.
All right. So, 3 miners trapped in Red Chris mine uninjured. Rescue efforts continue. Open pit copper mine is located 888 kilometers northwest of Prince George. So Premier David Eby had confirmed at the First Minister's meeting in Huntsville that 2 of the miners are from BC and one's from Ontario. There was an accident, Eby told CBC, obviously, which we just heard. The open pit copper mine owned by Imperial Metals is located 80 kilometers south of Dease Lake. Operated by Newmount Corp, the mine opened in 2015. Spokesperson for Newmount told CBC there 2 fall of ground incidents Tuesday in an access area to an underground part of the mine. At the time of the initial incident, 3 business partner employees were working more than 500 meters beyond the affected zone and were asked to relocate to designated refuge station before a subsequent fall of ground blocked the access way. Following the first event, contact was established with the individuals and confirmation was received that they had safely relocated to one of multiple self-contained refugee bays. Now, you have to have these by law. They're little safe havens, little nooks in case there are any types of collapses or breaches within the mines. And there's a mandatory protocol. They have to have X amount of food, guaranteed fresh air, X amount of hours, blah, 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 in order to sustain life so that the rescue attempt has time to get to them. It's one of the great things that the mining corporations kind of set into place. And they did this decades ago. And I believe it was because of an accident that had happened in, I think it was Cape Breton. I could be wrong on that. Where there was a big collapse and there was a large loss of life. Now, back in the day, a lot of the East Coast mines, the companies treated their employees like crap. Black lung was a thing. If you ever get the chance, there's a movie called Margaret's Museum. I urge you to watch that show. It's got Helena Bonham Carter. I'm a big fan of hers actor, like as an actress. The story is all about kind of, it's a love story, blah, blah, blah. But it really showcases the reality of what it was like for a lot of the Atlantic Canadians, because mining was like the job out there to do. There wasn't a lot of business, and these big conglomerates, they really abused the people out there. I urge you, if you get a chance, Margaret's Museum. It's a Canadian movie. It's fabulous. It really is. It's an amazing movie. Like an amazing movie. Anyways, so all appropriate emergency response protocols were activated immediately. The spokesperson said Newmont is actively accessing the methods and technologies available to restore communication and safely bring their team members to surface. Their priority remains on ensuring the safety of the 3 individuals and response teams supporting this effort. Blah, blah, blah. Back to the worst premier in Canada.
On your question, I agree strongly with Premier Smith that we have a huge amount of work to do that is going to create incredible economic opportunity for our 2 provinces. It is without doubt. We have our points of disagreement, but there are far more points of agreement in terms of how we're going to build our economies in our respective provinces. My focus as the BC Premier is on projects that we have where we're either imminent in terms of final investment decision or final investment decision has been taken, and we need a strong federal partner to be able to support us in delivering those projects, north of $50 billion worth of projects in our province alone. And what I've encouraged the Prime Minister and Premier Smith to do about their project that they're excited about is to identify a proponent and to move forward with that if that is the direction that they'd like to go. I will acknowledge some frustration that we have so many projects that are either imminent shovel in the ground projects or with a small amount of support from the federal government would be ready to go. And a lot of the discussion is around this project that does not currently have a proponent. So let's get working on what we can do to
Sure
build.
loves saying that, doesn't he? Even though he knows. He knows. I mean, we know the guy is, like definitely lost his marbles. He's rattling around a single marble upstairs. We know that just by his policies and what he's doing to BC. But you can't be that daft unless his funders are going, whoa, we don't want that, which is Tides and Sierra and all the rest of these American organizations that are funded by the tycoons down in the States that don't want our oil going anywhere else but down there at a huge discount.
Build this country and build our economy, and when Premier Smith and the Prime Minister are in position with a proponent, we're absolutely willing to have those conversations with them.
Hi there, Kate McKenna with CBC. This is for Premier Ford. Premier Ford, I'm wondering if you could expand on some of what you were talking about regarding the conflict between the federal government and the provinces over immigration. What exactly is the issue, and what did the federal minister say?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a conflict. The conversation we had with the Prime Minister is very open, and under the Constitution that I have to thank Premier Smith for mentioning, we have authority in that area. No one understands their sectors and their labor force better than the premiers. And by no means, I want to emphasize this, it's no means the Prime Minister's, well, this is his issue right now, but this has been going on for decades. I'll give you an example. I have a tremendous amount of asylum seekers that are up in Etobicoke and in the hotels. They're healthy, they're willing to work, they're hardworking people, but they're waiting over 2 years. And they're just sucking off the system nonstop, not their fault. The fault falls under immigration, that it takes over 2 years to get a work permit. So as we're paying education, paying healthcare, paying their rent in hotels, which is exorbitant, they want to get out there and they want to be like every other Canadian. They want to find a job. They want to be able to first start off renting a condo or part of a house and then buying a house. But we're tired of waiting around. I can't wait around. It's costing our province an absolute fortune. Just last year, we were close to 100,000 asylum seekers, and I'm still waiting to get paid back from the federal government. That's one issue. But there's jobs available in Ontario, and we need to give them work permits and make sure that they're out there working and contributing back to society. I'm not waiting any longer. We're issuing work permits in Ontario for these folks to give back and contribute to society in Ontario.
Boris Proulx, Le Devoir.
So I'm just going to show this one more time here, right? I did this on the previous episode. As of January 1st, 2025, Canada's non-permanent resident population was estimated at approximately 3,049,277, which is 18.5% of the private sector workforce. We are being overwhelmed. This is done on purpose. The Liberal Party does not care about you. They want you gone. They want you gone. They do not want that, what they refer to as old stock Canadians. They don't want that. They don't want people who have morals. They want us gone. They want us to be completely flooded out so that we have no say. We will not have the power through our votes anymore. We won't have the power. They're breaking everything there is that they can possibly do to Canada for a reason. And this is why the ankle's up, which I heard today from a fan, and I love it because, well, it kind of pertains a little bit more reality than the elbows up. The mentality of these people who voted Liberal. They're not Canadian. They're not Canadian. We're going to scroll a little bit further ahead here.
Mark McAllister from City News. A question for Premier Ford, if possible. A month ago, you had said that you would be all over Prime Minister Carney when it came to bail reform. Yes. Just a few moments ago, you said that you would continue to hold him to account on the matter. Excuse me. There is indication that there is legislation coming forward in the fall. So where is the disconnect exactly at this point that there's a need to continue to hold him to account?
Well, I just want to make sure that they put that legislation forward. You know, I've heard this in the past, and I have a great deal of respect for Prime Minister Carney. He's a gentleman that when he says he's going to do something, I believe him. He's going to get it done. But there still has to be accountability. And it's not, you know, half-baked either, because last time it was kind of hokey-pokey. We want, you know, full-fledged bail reform. And I'd love to see mandatory sentencing. So when someone breaks into your home, puts a gun to your head, terrorizes your neighborhood, doesn't get out on bail after being out on bail for 5 times. And that's what we need. When you break a law, one country, one law, you're going to jail, and there'll be a deterrent for all the other criminals who want to terrorize our neighborhoods and keep them behind bars. So when they steal a car or put a gun to someone's head, well, you're going to jail for a long time if you use a weapon.
Now, prior to the election, I was trying to get the word out there. Every policing organization, RCMP, police, all of them, were all endorsing the Conservative Party because they saw and realize what the Liberal Party was trying to do. This is why I need you to like, share, and subscribe. There are people out there who are blanketed. All they watch is propaganda. And through conversation and just your nice, leisurely, friendly share, they'll click and go, oh, well, if so-and-so watches this, I'll watch it. And maybe we can start to open more eyes. And people can actually see the truth. Sorry, so sorry. Just the truth, just the facts. And I also need you to like, share, and subscribe because I'm getting censored. I get censored. I get censored hardcore because I'm not bleeping out the words he's saying, and I say a lot of the words too because I'm not going to treat my audience like children. I believe in free speech. I believe I should have the same types of regulations and laws on me as the propaganda does, which is zero. It should be free speech, but that's not the world we live in. We live in the liberal socialist world now. The post-national state. We're going to scroll ahead a little wee bit.
I just want to jump in on the last comments there about making sure we spend military spending right across our country. And
now, this is the smartest thing Dougie said throughout all of this. And this is a key, this should have been priority since Confederation.
And tied into economic growth. I can't have a press conference without mentioning 2 companies, General Dynamics in London, light armored vehicles, great people down there, and Heddle Shipyards, which I know maybe they're partnering up with Davies or around the country, but they're a great company in Hamilton. We need to spread this work right across the country. Thank you.
If I could add as well on that, my apologies there, but what an incredible moment we're in terms of the solutions that we have. And I think we have to look from within, and I look to the critical mineral potential we have across this country, in particular to the north. And in the last few days, it's been great to have very meaningful conversations with my colleagues, but as well with the Prime Minister to talk about what we could do to expedite these big nation-building projects that really will start employing Canadians from coast to coast to coast, but that are dual use as well, so that our communities could truly benefit from those. So from that perspective, the discussions around Arctic security are at the forefront, and I really think that's a moment that we're in where we have to ensure that our communities are as healthy as they are as we assert our sovereignty as a country. But there's so much that we have in terms of the opportunity, and I think unlocking those through these dual-use infrastructure is going to be key, whether it's the Arctic Security Corridor, the Grays Bay Road and Port, or the Kivadlik Hydro Fiber Link, or the Deep Sea Port in Qikirtaljuat. There's some really nation-building moments that we're in, and I think Nunavut has so much to offer the country, and I can't thank my colleagues here enough for the incredible support we do get, that we need to invest from coast to coast to coast.
Now, I don't know much about PJ Agikuk, but every time I hear him speak, I am impressed by him. He seems to have a very clear, concise, moral standing. He's a very good speaker. And well, from my time that I worked up at the remote north, he reminds me of the peoples that live up there. They're a humble, hard-working, just very grateful people. And he, I guess, is done. I guess this is going to be his last table. He's stepping down or something along the lines. I'll have to look into that. He's going to be missed. I enjoy listening to him talk because, like I said, he's very clear, steadfast in his ways, and he doesn't seem to take sides in anything. He seems to be very open. He just wants better for his people in Canada. So, PJ, shout out to you, buddy. Like I said, I don't know that much about you, but you impress me every time you talk. I the type of guy I could have for dinner or have for a neighbor and just be totally happy with. He just seems to be that type of great person, just easygoing, man, just such a straight shooter. Anyways, moving ahead.
Hello, I'm Michael Strapia with CPAC. I direct my question to you, Premier Ford, but invite commentary from other premiers as well, because in the communique, there's the reference that premiers look forward to a comprehensive mutual recognition agreement covering all goods with implementation by December of this year. I'm wondering, where are you right now in those discussions? At what point will Canadians hear details about what you as premiers are agreeing to achieving internal free trade?
Well, I think we've come a long way, considering no other group of premiers, as long as I can ever remember, have been able to sign 11 MOUs. There's still a couple, and had a great conversation with the two premiers from Quebec and Newfoundland, and they're going to, I'm sure they're going to come on board as well. This is about making sure that we have free and fair trade across our country. And to be very frank, before this came to topic this year, 99% of Canadians believe that they could have free trade across the country. But this is going to boost our economy by over $200 billion. It will increase our GDP by anywhere from 5 to 6%. But you talk to the average person, they can't believe that we can ship a bottle of wine from Ontario out to BC or vice versa. And the case that you were saying, Tim, about the deal about someone shipping a case from Quebec into Nova Scotia got charged. Do you believe that? Or where was it? New Brunswick? New Brunswick, sorry. But do you believe that? Someone being charged, going to court because they buy a case of booze in Quebec and bring it to New Brunswick? So we're moving forward with this. We're getting rid of, at least Ontario is, getting rid of any amendments, and we're going full steam. Ontario's open for business, and we look forward to companies coming to Ontario and opening up shop here.
And if I can just take the opportunity to jump in because he's referencing the Como case, I'm pleased to confirm that New Brunswick passed legislation this year to eliminate that personal exemption. So you can bring alcohol products from Quebec into New Brunswick now with no fines. And we've also passed a direct-to-consumer legislation so that New Brunswickers can enjoy the benefits of BC wines and Ontario wines, and look forward to continuing to expand the work like we're doing on labor mobility. And I'll just echo, actually, that I think we have made more progress than has been made in a long time on internal trade and removing exemptions, thankfully with a partner in the federal government who's also been aggressive on that, and I appreciate the desire to see the details and see the when. I think you'll find friends who are similarly impatient at this table of wanting to see it get to that simple, clean document that all Canadians and entrepreneurs can understand about the fact that they can put a good they've made in a truck in BC and take it all the way across the country without added burden, pause, or cost. That's what we're striving towards. We're making good progress, and we're optimistic that we'll have something that people will appreciate come the end of this year.
Okay, maybe. Now, what she's talking about is this case. Now, this. So let's just start off with. We'll go right to the Constitution. Okay, so in the Constitution, Article 121. All articles of the growth, produce, or manufacture of any one of the provinces shall, from and after the Union, be admitted free into each of the other provinces. Now, this is from the original Constitution Act of 1867. I have brought this up many a times. I have discussed this. Before these guys were even talking about this whole free trade between provinces. Putting in laws. Okay, so I'm just going to back up here. When I was a kid, my grandpa was leaving Saskatchewan, going to Alberta. The taxes on liquor were cheaper in Saskatchewan. All of the family got together that was living in Alberta, put a list together, and said, can you pick us up all of this stuff for our great big Christmas get-togethers? They stopped my grandpa at the border. Grandpa and Grandma, you can imagine. It's not like he was hauling a freight liner full of liquor. This was 4 or 5 families of 13 that were living in Alberta that gave him money to bring down just the liquor for Christmas. It was like a bonus, the fact that Grandpa was coming down and he was going to pick up this liquor for us. They stopped him at the border, they took all his liquor, and they fined him. He was livid. Everybody was. It was my first taste of reality where I went, what? Wait, what? You can't buy something in one province and go to another? Well, being a bit of a reader, that sat in the back of my head for a long time and was always this little, ew, made my ear curl. And I realized what it was is it was a way for the elite to control, in cahoots with governments, tax regulation and monopolies. This is why our original Constitution wrote this in there, is because they realized that if one province was cheaper than another, the other province that was more expensive would have to change policy in order to make it cheap and allow the system to work so that there was competition, which competition, people, not only creates jobs, drives down prices, and forces governments to stop taxing the living daylights out of its citizens. It not only controls corporations from ripping you off, but it puts a stop to governments from ripping you off. I can drive across the border, I can buy a 60-pounder of whiskey for $16 to get the really good stuff for like $23. Here in Canada, the cheap whiskey is like $52, $56. The good stuff, holy crikey, man, $100 for a 60-pounder. Taxes and monopolies. It's ridiculous. The worst part about it is the Supreme Court. This shows you how broken the system is. This is what you get when you get appointed judges. They upheld the restrictions on moving booze between provinces. This goes on everything. Cigarettes, the whole works. I can't go to Ontario where smokes are cheaper, buy a couple cartons of smokes for some buddies and bring them across. If I get pulled over and bust, oh my God. I get charged. They take the smokes. It's ridiculous. It stops the transparency between governments. It stops provinces from going, wait a minute. Well, we're losing hundreds and hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars because everybody's going over to Alberta or everybody's going over to so-and-so or everybody's going because it's cheaper. Which helps push policy. And the voters start to speak up. This is why Canada is taxed out the yin-yang. Like this, thanks to table salt. Check out the dates on the bottom. This is the taxes and basic expenditures of the average Canadian family from 1961 to 2024. Check out the taxes. Harper warned. He begged, he pleaded. CBC, CTV, and all the rest of the propaganda used every tool they could to try to hide the facts. In fact, they were promoting the turd and the Liberals. Oh, the budget will balance itself. Every economist that had half a grain of moral integrity was also trying to speak up and get airwaves to no prevail, thanks to the CRTC regulated, liberal, socialist funded, and they all knew they were going to get raises when the Liberals got in power because the Liberals told them that. Hell, most of the people that are in the Liberal Party worked for propaganda media. Look at our costs, people. This is socialism. And again, because you have a court system, a literal court system that goes against everything it is to be Canadian. You cannot appoint Supreme Court judges. No judges should be appointed. And there should be a way to remove them if we find out when they get in that position that they're not doing a very good job. They're not there to back the government. They're supposed to be there for the people. The Supreme Court of Canada has ruled against New Brunswick man who challenged charges laid against him of transporting alcohol from Quebec to New Brunswick. It's a decision that reinforces the legal strength of trade barriers between provinces when it comes to free flow of products like alcohol and deals to disheartening blow to free trade advocates across the country. The unanimous Supreme Court decision states that provincial governments have the power to enact laws that restrict commerce if they deem that it will benefit their respective provinces. Unconstitutional, governments out of control, socialism. New Brunswick's ability to exercise oversight over liquor supplies in the province would be undermined if non-corporation liquor could flow freely across borders and out of the garages and bootleggers of homeowners, the Supreme Court said. Do you hear what they... I'm gonna read that one more time. New Brunswick's ability to exercise oversight over liquor supplies in the province would be undermined if non-corporation liquor could flow freely across borders and out of, listen carefully, the garages of bootleggers and home brewers. That statement in itself is a blatant lie. I'm not allowed to sell my liquor without a license. So, what are they talking about? He didn't go buy illegal booze. He went and bought licensed, legally sold beer and was bringing it home to save himself a small fortune. Unbelievable. Moving on.
Samantha Pope.
When we discussed healthcare recently, one thing of note that I think has impact on what Premier Legault has said is, provincial healthcare budgets in a post-pandemic world have, increased significantly. As population increases, I think in fairness, the complexity of what's walking through the front door of our hospitals and our healthcare system are their people, and but it's certainly increased over the last decade or so. The whole conversation around mental health, addictions, recovery is changing before our very eyes. As the drugs that are in our community today are very different than the drugs that were in our nation a decade ago, and we're seeing 8, 9, 10% increases across the board, or at least in Saskatchewan, and I don't think we're alone, in the investments that we're making in delivering health care and providing primary health care providers of all types and a timely surgery. And so the conversation, and really I think it's relevant because when you look at the Council of Federations formation just over 20 years ago, it really was formed to work alongside the federal government in adequately funding what was ever-increasing healthcare costs at that point in time, and that conversation continues. Maybe not yesterday at the FMM opportunity that we had, but it continues at this table as the investments that provinces are making are far higher than the increases that we're seeing in the Canada Health Transfer, and the investment that the federal government has made has slipped to be far below where it was originally or where it was intended to be over time. However, in saying that, I would say again that there is an open ear and there is an open conversation with the Prime Minister. I'd say maybe more open than it's been in a decade on the priorities of the healthcare system being at least shared with the provinces as opposed to being imposed on by the Prime Minister's office. And so we'll get to that conversation with the Prime Minister. I know the Health Minister's table certainly is there. But again, in addition to my comments earlier about an ever-changing, rapidly changing environment, whether it be international, national, or provincial, or even at the community level, my goodness, we could all do with just a little bit less going on from time to time. Things are happening very quickly, and they continue in the healthcare field as well.
Et juste une autre chose sur cette question. La livraison d'un système de santé universel, c'est une de nos valeurs.
Oh, yeah. You're going to skip his French and go to the English.
So I just wanted to say briefly, to me, having a universal healthcare system.
Now, this guy's a blowhard. That's my opinion. Let me know how you feel in the comments. He's a blowhard. He tries everything he can to look good. There's been some video I'm probably going to show you in another episode here, where he's just a schmuck, and it looks like he's railed right up at this one presser. It's just an absolute embarrassment. But listen to. I think he's challenging EB on how dumb can a person be and still get elected.
That is open to everybody is one of our fundamental Canadian values.
Now, listen, this is him spotlighting. This is him he's trying to listen to, look at me! But he should have shut up because you hear, how empty in the brain he is.
Like, this is one of the things that separates us from the Americans. And so if we want to say that we're standing up to Donald Trump and we're never going to be the 51st state, let's make sure that our universal healthcare system is strong and supports Canadians in every region of the country. And I think we have a good partner in the Prime Minister right now to advance that project. And it doesn't hurt that they have other tools at the federal level. They have monetary tools where we only have fiscal tools, right?
Now listen. He fits right into the Liberal NDP. Socialists. no idea of monetary policy, no idea.
They can borrow, they can print money, they can do quantitative easing, all these other things. But I think if we work together.
Say what?
They can borrow, they can print money, they can do quantitative monetary tools, where we only have fiscal tools, right? They can borrow, they can print money, they can do quantitative easing, all these other things. But I think if we work together, along with the mega projects, along with the internal trade, making healthcare universal for every Canadian, that's something that we should all be proud of. That's our heritage, that's our legacy, that's who we are.
It is universal, you schmuck. Now, let the greatest premier in Canada throw reality on this out of control, burning stupidity.
I think you asked if the federal government should borrow money in order to give more on this front, and I have to say we've tried that, and we have an inflation crisis, an affordability crisis. I think that the new model that we're pursuing is let's make everybody wealthy. Let's make money before we spend it. And that, I think, is the focus of our conversation with the Prime Minister, is what are the big wealth-generating, nation-building projects that we can build so that we can get more wealth creators, more job creators, more taxpayers, so that we can pay for the things that we care about, healthcare being one, but we also have a 5% NATO commitment that has to be reached as well. And so we can't keep on digging a dead hole on that. We've got to do a reversal. And so I think that was the nature of the conversation with the Prime Minister. And so once we get to that point where some of these projects are ready to go and we're generating more revenue and we're in balanced budgets, then I think we can talk about what those priorities might be.
Thank you, Danielle. Balanced budgets. Oh my God. No more debt. Please, no more debt. In 10 years, the Liberals have spent more money than every single party since Confederation added together. You wonder why you can't afford to live in Canada, why people are fleeing. And by the way, there are some wicked articles, and independents have done some amazing write-ups and episodes on how out of touch Canada really is when it comes to their Medicare, our socialist medical system. When the largest portion of your tax dollars goes towards paying for something that doesn't work, and you will the numbers of people who are perishing in waiting rooms is skyrocketing. The rich fly anywhere they want and go and get medical attention. They're not waiting. The system's crumbling on the people that need it the most. You can go down to the States, and in the States, if you're an American citizen, it is a small percentage. It works out to like 13% of your monthly wage to pay for the insurance, to get AAA insurance. Here in Canada, it's like 30% of your wage for the worst medical system in the G7 and the G20. And wait a minute, I think we were ranked like 111th out of the 120. Like, our system is complete garbage. It's not the workers' faults. We have amazing healthcare workers. The nurses, the doctors, the physiotherapists, the x-ray technicians, they're amazing. Amazing. Pull anyone aside or befriend any of them and get a actual real conversation out of them and let them tell you, and they will tell you, the system is beyond broken. It is shattered into pieces. This guy wants to spend more money. Now look at his corrected smile.
This will be the last reporter.
Samantha Pope,
I love
CTV
this.
News. This question is for Premier Ford. What do you make of Japan
Pan
getting
across.
a trade
Look at
deal
this.
with the
Look at
US
this.
with lower tariffs? Specifically, what
that
does
didn't
that
go as
mean
good as
for
I thought it
Canada's
was. I'm an
car
idiot.
industry?
Hopefully nobody caught on to how stupid I really am.
Well, if we're gonna start doing comparators, let's put this into perspective. Japan buys approximately $79 billion worth of products off the U.S. We buy $349 billion of products off the U.S. We're the U.S.'s #1 customer. So we buy 400% more than what Japan, actually more than 400% more than what Japan pay. So maybe when Japan catches up to us, then we can sit down and talk those numbers.
Okay. Doug, you really have you just don't get it.
President Trump securing a $550 billion trade deal with Japan. And folks, this is not just a handshake and a headline. This is a blue-collar economic windfall.
But I just signed the largest trade deal in history. I think maybe the largest deal in history with Japan. I always say it has to be great for everybody. It's a great deal. A lot different from the deals in the past, I can tell you that. But we're doing really well as a country. We're strong. We have a lot of money flowing in.
Welcome to the Big Money Show. I'm Daga McDowell, joined by my co-host, Jonathan Hoenig, Brian Brimberg, Group founder and economist extraordinaire. 15% tariffs, 90% of the profits flowing right back into the United States. Japan will open its economy to U.S.-made automobiles and agricultural products. President Trump says it will create hundreds of thousands of American jobs, not consulting jobs, not human resources directors, actual make stuff jobs, building automobiles, cars, growing food, exporting American energy, leverage, pressure, and results.
Exporting a lot of Canadian energy that they get at a discount because we have all of these insane globalist rules suppressing us, holding us down. EB.
The president is already pivoting to the European Union, and Brussels is scrambling to avoid a 30% tariff. The president is flipping the script, and American workers are cashing in. John, how do you see this? Japan, critical trading partner, critical ally of the U.S., and this deal gets done. And the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, does deserve a good chunk of the credit here.
I concur with the U.S. equity market and the Japanese equity market. I think today was up by more than 3%. Some of the auto stocks in Japan posted even bigger gains. What really stands out to me, as far as the American worker is concerned, is that this inflow of capital, that $550 billion that Trump is speaking about, that's telling me that perhaps Japanese automakers will increase their presence in the United States, build more cars, and that implies more manufacturing jobs for Americans. This is definitely a positive.
I'm familiar with the Japanese automakers throughout the South because they were in right-to-work states, right?
Yep.
You're going, yep, shaking your head. Continue.
Well, I think it's the auto part of this is interesting, and I'm kind of curious to see where it goes because, Japan was really concerned about 25% hitting their autos, and those are not. They've got a lot of auto manufacturers in the South. They've got a lot of manufacturing outside of the U.S. as well, so that's an issue in terms of tariffs. But the interesting question now is what does it mean for Canadian and Mexican automobiles that have U.S. content in them? And this is what I think this could be the roadmap for that because it went from 25% to 15%. Isn't it funny that everyone's breathing a sigh of relief at 15%? This is total Trump, right? Because if he would have come into this thing months ago and said, I want a 15% tariff, I'm sure everybody would have melted down about that and said, that's terrible. It's got to be lower than that. But because he came in at these higher levels, very Trumpian, 15%, the market's like, oh, good, 15%. But so, Jonathan, let me just say, but I think Canada and Mexico now are saying, okay, how do we get in on the 15%? And the big three automakers want to see that happen. So we'll see if it's a template here.
Isn't that the issue, though? I mean, if the goal is to get people to manufacture in the U.S. at 15%, at 20%, it's still profitable to import those foreign goods. So it almost seems like, you have to have the tariff be something like 30, 40, 50% if you actually want to bring that manufacturing home. A lot of importers will say, okay, 15, 10, 20% we can kick in. 50, 60 we cannot. So is this really going to actually achieve the president's goal
I think, as I said earlier, I think the important point is there seems to be some implication of increased direct investment in the U.S. economy by Japanese companies. When I used to have a full head of hair like you, back in the early 80s, Ronald Reagan was president. He was under pressure to place tariffs on Japanese automakers because they were overtaking the U.S. auto market. But instead of what the Japanese automakers agreed to do was to begin to establish these manufacturing plants in, Tennessee, wherever, Alabama, and they did that in place of having to have these tariffs placed upon them. Japanese auto stocks increased sharply today, and that's because Japanese investors, global investors, are convinced that these Japanese automakers, the Toyotas and the like, have the profit margins needed to absorb a lot of these tariffs without suffering unduly. And they got that uncertainty out of the way.
Just go ahead.
No, it's okay.
No, go ahead.
Now, $550 billion. Think of that number, okay? Supposedly this year we're looking at finally breaking $3 trillion as our complete one-year GDP. Almost 1/5 of our total GDP has just been signed from Japan. This is no small deal, Dougie. And listen very carefully to the rest of this.
I was just going to say, if they manufacture here, to Jonathan's point, then they don't, or they manufacture components and things, and that's what this investment part of it is about, then they don't have to pay anything. So that's the incentive. I mean, 15% is still more than zero, which I think is positive. But I just wanted to talk about the access part, Dagan, because the investment here in the United States is important. It's going to create jobs. But President Trump and his team have been talking about access to foreign markets. This is what they want for China, for example, to open things up so that we can do more trade over there. We can sell more of our goods over there. And I think that piece of this is interesting too, because as these deals come out, if they do serve, Brian, to your point, as a template, it sort of lays the foundation for the other countries that we're negotiating with right now. I go back to that New York Post cover. I'm not tired of winning yet, and the market likes this deal.
One of my questions would be, what type of motor vehicles do the Japanese want to import from the United States? Maybe pickup trucks, being something, some specialized vehicle? I have some questions about that.
Well, it sounds like they get their choice now because there's not going to be a tariff.
And you can't underestimate the importance of Japan as a trading partner. They are our biggest foreign investor is Japan, and our number 5th biggest importer. So this is a very vice versa positive relationship for Americans. And the fact that, like it or not, the fact is these tariffs are higher than they were just 10, 15 years ago. Yes, I know they're down from 24% to 15% now, but they were 2% before Trump came to office. Right. So tariffs are still up quite a bit.
And tariffs are a sales tax. And when you tax more of something, you get less of it. And, quite frankly, but I think we're seeing right now as a first step as broadening the tax base for the U.S. government. Who knows? There might be a further broadening in the future as a means of trying to close that federal budget gap.
I think that sales tax thing, though, is overplayed a little bit in terms of where do the costs get passed on. I just think that was like the big boogeyman when this all started. You're all getting a big tax. Watch your prices go up. And I just don't think that's played out. Now maybe it'll play out. But and Jonathan, just on your point about the tariffs and 10 to 15%, and Jackie, I think, is going here. 10 to 15%, I still think is a big encouragement for companies to look at relocating to the U.S. I mean, it's not nothing. I don't think the president wants to completely cut off the flow, and I think he likes revenue more than anything, and that's what the 10 to 15% will get you. But every company is on notice. If you want to make your life simpler now and in the future, because I think the American people are with the president, you should look at doing it in America. To me, that is the most crystal clear message the president has sent economically in this term so far.
And who's our biggest trade adversary? It's not Japan nowadays, it's China. Is this sending a message to China? And do we really want to have foreign direct investment from Chinese companies in the United States? I wonder. We have a military problem with them, national security problems.
Well, I mean, one thing is for sure is that the certainty is a positive. And I think to your point, John, that's one reason that you're seeing equity markets both at here and at home up today, because, you know, markets and investors can start to plan even a little bit long term. With all respect to the president, he's talking, well, in 30 days we could have this, and 60 days we can have that. As investors, we're looking much more further out from that. So the fact that we have some certainty here, that to me says why the market.
You know, the president also did a Truth Social post, and I don't have it in front of me, but he said something very interesting today. He said, I will, in response to the Japan deal, I will trade tariff points for market access. I don't know if you saw that post. And I thought that was such...
Did you hear that? Now, he's right. That's what he said in the post. Listen carefully.
Points for market access. I don't know if you saw...
He will trade tariff points for market access. Hey, milk cartel. I don't know about the rest of you Canadians. Let me know how you feel in the comment. It's got to go. Supply management is, well, kind of like I was saying with the whole barrier between trading with provinces. It stops any competition. It stops growth. It does nothing to benefit any individuals except the elite and those who possess the card, the quota, who a lot of them are really choked because they're constantly dumping milk. And they know they're set up. If they had a free system, they could be selling milk and making way more profit for themselves than going through the cartel.
Saw that post, and I thought that was such an interesting post from a certainty standpoint, from a where he's going standpoint. That was one of the first times I've heard him say, I will give up on tariffs, which you know he loves, because he wants more than anything market access for U.S. goods. I do think investors like that kind of message because it is an access openness message.
And this all gets to what we were talking about yesterday about growth and the overall economic engine that he's trying to build here. I don't think you can't really put tangible values necessarily on how much they're going to take from us. But if every country he's negotiating with starts taking more goods, it starts to become, it's significant. We were even talking about tariff revenue. Nobody was expecting $100 billion so far or $300 billion by the end of the year. So these are aspects, and also goes back to the big, beautiful law, Dagan, because at the end of the day, we need that growth engine to pay for some of the stuff that was in there. And this is how the balancing act happens.
Now, last clip.
Good evening. We begin tonight with focus once again on the U.S. president's previous referrals to Canadians as nasty. Amid the trade war, the U.S. ambassador to this country provoking strong reaction here after suggesting at a conference in the States the reasons Donald Trump views Canadians as mean and nasty to deal with is because many residents are boycotting U.S. travel and American booze is still off the shelves.
Now, liberals are mean and nasty. They like to try and come off as being, oh no, we're not, we're liberal, we're liberals. They're all mean and nasty because they refuse to budge. They do not believe that an individual should be free to speak and think as they wish. No. You have to abide by whatever the cult at that time is pushing. That's liberalism. Now listen, this is important because this deals not only with us nationally as a protectionist socialist system, but it's an echo of what Canada is becoming. This isn't the Canada I grew up in.
What some would call pushback. CTV's Katie Griffin has been following this story and joins us live. Katie.
Patricia, BC Premier David Eby, whose office received the audio of these comments, says the remarks show these efforts to stand up to Trump are having an impact. Many in Ottawa say Trump's rhetoric just strengthens their resolve to buy Canadian and boycott travel down south.
Now, I think it was given to Eby as a hint. Hey, Eby, your rhetoric is not helping. Your liberal mentality, NDP mentality, is causing way more harm than good.
We have Genevieve here out of Montreal.
At Maker House, the push to buy Canadian is as strong as ever.
We're up still double last year this past week. So even after Canada Day, the push to buy Canadian is sustaining. The current upswing is more people finding the value in keeping their money in their community.
That's what drew this couple in. They're visiting from Cambridge, Ontario.
We usually like taking trips to the States because there was so much to do, so much to see. But now we've been finding that going to places around Canada is a lot better.
It's also cheaper because our dollar is like a peso, which is a lot of the incentive to why a lot of people before Trump, were already not going down to the States because it wasn't cheap anymore. It costs a fortune for us to go down there. Our dollar is worthless. Propaganda. This is propaganda. This is the reason we're losing our Canadianism.
We just really like supporting, Canada right now. And so we've been avoiding the States for the moment.
Trade tensions heightened after U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra said this at a conference in Washington State.
Canadians staying home, that's their business. I don't like it, but if that's what they want to do, it's fine. If you want to ban American alcohol, that's fine. There are reasons why the president and some of his team refer to Canada as being mean and nasty to deal with. Okay, because of some of those steps.
I think Trump is Trump.
That's why. The tariffs got blown way out of proportion. The media used this, pushed this hate. It's not in Canadians to hate like this. It's just not. And on previous episodes, I've talked about this and even shown it. Americans they're like, what happened to Canada? They're so ignorant. They've lost their way. They're not the freedom-loving, everyday, hi, how's it going? Sorry, so sorry, apologetic, Chip and Dale type of. We're not Canadian anymore. Propaganda is literally twisting, and the height of this all happened during the Wuhan, when people literally got so brainwashed that they were calling and ratting out their own family. How anti-Canadian is that? That was the beginning of, the demise to Canada. It started with the election that put the turd in power, the Liberal Party in power. And it's been dominoing down. But that Wuhan moment was, there's still so many people that they just refuse to open their eyes and realize what they did. It was an echo, and again, previous episodes where I actually show a survivor of the Holocaust in one of her many speeches around the world go through a list of things to watch out for when a government starts to do certain things. And 3/4 of that list, Canada has checked off in the last 10 years. I'm not going to show any more propaganda. I know I'm already way over time once again, and I apologize. Sorry, so sorry. I need the time to get the truth, just the facts out. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I hope I broke it down well enough for you. There was a lot more information I could have put in there as all of the presser was going on to just throw reality into this entire equation. The liberal 2 + 2 = 5 equation that the world we're living in right now. It's insane. I've had a few emails sent out to me, people thanking me for the quality of the clothing. Thank you. I literally go out of my way to not only make sure that the detail and decals are sublime, but that the quality of the clothing is top notch. So thank you guys for the compliment. I appreciate it. I put a lot of work into it. If you want to support the channel, you could do so like money transfer through Canadian Citizen Journal at gmail.com, or I'd rather purchase some clothing, you know, wear it with pride. Usually I got a logo somewhere here and there and some awesome sayings on the front and the back, and like I said, really good quality. So thanks you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I'm Alias the Guy. You've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And if you are, punch that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes, and it helps me grow the channel. Till next time, stay informed.